Okay, we have
Coming back.
time to get started.
Hey.
Hi, everybody, welcome back.
Mhm.
Here we go again. So I guess we're going to start with Ann. or-
The city manager's performance evaluation. So
Okay.
good evening, everybody. In December, you all met and developed a process for doing the city manager performance evaluation. Just to let you know, the last time the city did a city manager performance evaluation was in 2009. So this is kind of uncharted territory for us. But so in the process, you had requested department directors do a assessment of the city manager's staffing and supervision, and they did evaluation, and that was consolidated and presented to you. And then the city manager prepared a memorandum with his accomplishments and other goals and objectives, which were provided to you as well. And then the city council each completed a performance evaluation using different criteria and had comments as well. And what I do is consolidated them and averaged all of the evaluations into one evaluation, which I distributed to you guys. So tonight we're here to discuss the city manager's performance, and then there is an item on the agenda for the city manager performance as well as proposed merit increase. One of the things in the city manager's contract that stipulates in there that it says that after conducting an annual review of the city manager's job performance, the city council shall consider the results of his performance and guidelines applied to department heads in determining the amount of salary adjustment and benefit adjustment for the city manager. So the department directors received a 3%, average 3% adjustment to their salaries on October 1. That was a result of the pay study that the city did. And
Is it
then,
3.0?
what?
3.0?
There was an average, might be 3.01, 02, but I'll just say an average of 3%. And then in addition to that, the department directors are eligible for merit increase on their annual anniversary. And that merit increase goes anywhere from 2 to 3%. 2% being if they meet their criteria, 2.5% above, and 3% if they exceed. So if you're going to use that criteria for the evaluation for the city manager, then obviously you would be looking at anywhere from a 3 to 6% increase. Okay, kind of give you a guideline. So at this point, if you have any more questions of me in terms of the process, I would probably suggest they open it to the floor for your internal discussions about the city manager's performance.
Anybody want to start?
Should we just go through, should we just summarize this document we have here? I mean, the scores can speak for themselves.
I think too, I would say, I reviewed the city staff employee evaluations, which were all exceptional as well before doing ours. So even before we go into this, I think it's clear that he deserves the full 6%.
I agree.
So I don't think it's really a question. I don't think the discussion will be he gets the 3 because everybody else got a 3, and then a 2 or a 3. I mean, for coming in and getting his feet wet already and handling as many issues as he has, I think these scores, like you just said, speak for themselves. So I think a 3% is appropriate on that side. It should be a total of 6.
Okay. I think the one thing I'd like to mention is, even though it's a public record, I like to be discreet in the way we handle it. If people want to get a hold of it, they can. So I don't know if we necessarily need to go through each particular score, but if there are performance issues that you want to address, this would be the proper place to do that instead of in chambers in an hour. So.
I agree.
Well, I mean, reading over the responses, aside from the scores are all very high. The responses, one thing I noticed, were quite consistent. Everybody kind of is on the same page. And there are very few negative comments, which is good. And I know it's tough. It's hard to quantify some things because it has just been a year. But personally, I am delighted in how you have, fit into your role so smoothly, and it definitely looks good for the future. So to speak to Phil's point about the 6%, I mean, I can sleep easy enough with that because in this case, you definitely do deserve it. We would like to keep you. It was a big transition for you and your family to come up here, and you know, not going to say it's going to be 6% every year or every evaluation, but I think, you know, for this initial one, you know, I'm comfortable in going that route. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
No, I agree, and I mean, I just want to commend you on the job that you've done. I mean, from the beginning, just with the thoughts of the new city manager coming in and what level that we were going to be able to attract, and I'm just amazed at how much you've been able to accomplish and where we've already taken the city, and I just really appreciate your efforts. And I completely agree with giving him the full raise at this time.
Georgia?
Yes, but I also want to make sure that people know that the 3%, the first 3% is to align back with the salary negotiations that we just passed with the union, so it's not your first year you're getting a 6% raise. And then the other is merit-based, and that this first year he has had a lot on his plate, and he's accomplished a lot of it very well, most of it, very well.
Phil, do you want to add?
Yes, sir.
I would concur with what everyone said. I think, me personally, every time I've reached out to Mike, he's been accessible, and I feel you've done a great job. You definitely hit the ground running, and we needed that. And like everyone else said, it's definitely been very painless, and we appreciate that. For those of us that are new to the council too, I mean, it's been a very positive experience. So I would support being for 6% as well.
I was glad to see, especially with the department head reviews, that there were no real surprises, and then among us that we were all pretty consistent. So I thought that was really good, and I mean, it was just a breath of fresh air to read those department head comments. That gave me even more optimism for the future of our city. And then to your point of this is the first time we've done this ever. I liked the process a lot. So having the self-evaluation, kind of the summary of accomplishments, and then the department head reviews, I think that was a really nice process to give us kind of the 360 view of what was going on here. And again, the fact that there was nothing really startling or surprising in that was always good in an employer review. So I agree, I concur with 60%.
I'd like to comment on the process. I think this was more of a 180 review instead of a 360. The next time I would suggest that we also ask the city managers that he works with, as well as those he has to interact with in Jacksonville, so we get a better understanding of how he is perceived by those he has to work with in addition to work for. And then the section 2, third question, it's 3 different skill sets that are being asked for in the same question. Okay. So that would just need to be cleaned up for the next one.
Everybody here knows we're in a council manager form of government, and closely assimilates or closely identifies with the C corporation or any corporation. And you're our CEO. You stepped in after a CEO that had been here 23 years, which was unheard of. And everybody had their own way of doing things in that organization and administration. And you came in very, very professionally. You were genuine, you were open. We've made some really good changes. I think you've done a tremendous job, and I certainly support the 6% raise. I would tell you that we're going to be evaluated by the public on how we do things that are going to make Jacksonville Beach better in the future. And I think one of the most important things we've done so far is bringing on the team, because you've done just a really great job, and I expect you're going to do a great job for years to come. So thanks very much. Anybody else have anything they want to address? Because in the council meeting, I'll just address that we've discussed this in here and seek a motion from Ms. Hoffman for the 6% increase, and we'll wrap it up.
And then, going forward in the future, we can talk about any modifications to the process. I like the process. I thought the process was met the level that we needed. I don't know if a full 360 is necessary, and it's nice getting the division heads, but it's also, I'm not sure if there was a major problem, if it would come out through that process anyway, knowing that, kind of reviewing your boss. So, but I mean, I was very happy with what they did say. I'm okay with continuing that, but would be a little concerned going outside of the city and doing that, because I think we can get that feeling ourselves.
I've addressed that's the whole purpose of the city manager, is the outreach of the city, and to work with other cities. And that really, especially in our, with the interlocal agreement and how we are structured as a county in the Beaches City, it's important to make sure that they also see you as a team player. We might get some word of it, but those of us who don't really talk to a lot of the other elected officials wouldn't know the administrative functions within there. So how you worked with Jacksonville with the fire department contract, that would have been good to know. Like that kind of information. I'd also like to see more outreach with Florida League of Cities and things like that. So just a little bit more, so more information.
Yeah, I mean, because this is a great template to start off with, it was noted, this is all new to us also, so I'm sure there will be modifications. I mean, there has to be, it's kind of like an organic form, things will change, priorities will change, but starting off, I think, was excellent. Thanks to you, Ann, for doing that as well, for all work.
You did a great job too.
Absolutely. Anybody? Yes, sir.
He doesn't want the raise.
No, I was just going to say.
3%.
I was just going to say I appreciate the opportunity to serve this community and the opportunity that this council has given me. I recognize that 3 of you sitting up here were not part of the selection process to bring me in. With that being said, I think that you all right now have a pretty good dynamic in working together to get things done for the best interest of the city of Jacksonville Beach. I can't take the credit for everything that this organization has accomplished. It may start with the CEO, but it goes through the deputy city manager, all department directors, and all staff that are here as well. Their success is reflected in my success. And so, for the record, I'd just like to give a big shout out to all the employees as well. They have done an excellent job. They have responded to a new type of leadership, to a new philosophy of how we work together going forward, and they seem to be embracing it well. So I thank you for this past year, and thank you for the opportunity to serve for another year.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Turn it over to Chris now.
And kudos to you and your team, and thanks very much. You did a great job.
Especially doing it while you were sick. Compiling all of our input. She had the flu.
Oh,
We all had,
I
10 of
heard
us, 10 of
everybody
us on the
did.
second floor at City Hall all had the flu, so.
Yeah.
But we're well now.
Yeah,
I'll turn this
right.
over to Chris, another fellow member of the flu club. So.
Oh my God.
While Chris is bringing his stuff up, one of the comments that a majority of you had in there was engaging the community and our community outreach and upping the game, so to speak. I would like to introduce in the audience, we have Jacob Board. Where is he? Jacob is our new communications manager. He is in week 2. But with that being said, he's already got a laundry list that's a mile long, but it's geared around the priorities that you all have identified, starting with the website, social media presence, the Citizens Academy, and a few other things as well. So we've already got him rocking and rolling. We did pilfer him from the nonprofit center. So they're looking for someone right now. So if you know anyone, send them their way, because we took their guy. So the city attorney wanted an opportunity to speak to you all tonight regarding an item that's on the agenda for later tonight with regard to Baptist Hospital's request for a land development code change. And the city attorney put together, I guess you'd call it quite a lengthy legal analysis. And obviously, he could spend a whole lot of time in the council chambers discussing it when this item came up, or he could spend some time with you in here, laying out his legal theory for you, and then answering some questions you might have in advance of ever stepping in the meeting. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So the Planning and Development Department has a agenda item on tonight for the Baptist Hospital's proposed Land Development Code text amendment and a proposed ordinance with respect to a proposal for changing our sign code to allow for emergency services wayfinding signage is what they're seeking. So when this issue first came to my attention, when I first came on board, it was made known to me that there was the council and the planning commission, as well as the planning development director, did not have the benefit of a thorough legal analysis of what the proposals and the application was. So in order to address it, I prepared a memorandum and that serves as a supplement to the planning and development's agenda item memorandum. And also, we've had discussions with Baptist representatives. And those discussions have been fruitful and helpful and cooperative and professional. And it's been a pleasure meeting with the Baptist representatives. Mike and I have met with them. And it's been great working with them. And we haven't shut our doors and we're not done working with them. But this is my memorandum. I've circulated it to you. It's included as a supplement to the Planning and Development's agenda item. And essentially, without reiterating the full 10 pages of constitutional analysis, my suggestion is that this council, the city council, has for many decades, the city council for Jacksonville Beach has had a legally sound, constitutionally sound sign regulation that prohibits billboards and off-site signs. So that's been in place for many years. And then during 2015 time period when local governments were essentially scrambling to address their sign code issues in reaction to Reed versus Town of Gilbert, which addressed local signage issues. Jacksonville Beach was one of those local governments that went through the course of hiring a constitutional law sign expert, expended the public resources for those purposes to address their sign code and to shore up and make constitutionally sound the sign code. And the way that our sign code currently is constitutionally sound. We're in a good position. We don't face challenges because the prohibited portions of our sign code, which prohibit billboards and off-site signs, is constitutionally sound. And it meets the qualifications that in 2015 the Supreme Court stated that we are allowed to have these content-neutral regulations of prohibiting off-site signs, such as billboards and off-site commercial signage. That's where we currently stand. My memorandum walks us through the problems that we could possibly encounter if we were to change that, our current prohibition. And it walks you through what my viewpoint is of a fairly long list of the problems that the proposed ordinance from the hospital has as well. So I'd like for you to consider it in two contexts. One is where the City of Jacksonville Beach sign code prohibits off-site signs and billboards. That's perfectly constitutionally legal and sound prohibition. And I've described the reasons why historically it's been the standard that the city has had in place. And then the second way to look at this is the reasons why the ordinance that's proposed would cause us trouble if we were to make those adjustments. Not that we don't want to work with Baptist Hospital, of course, but it's that the way that the current proposed ordinance is drafted, it defeats all of the years of the council's efforts over the years of creating this constitutionally sound off-site sign prohibition. So if you have had an opportunity to read the memorandum, I'd be glad to answer your questions. But I'll just rest on the memorandum for purposes of advising the council. And ultimately, the conclusion is that I would suggest that the council not approve the application and the proposed ordinance as it's submitted to the council for tonight's agenda item.
Do you have proposed solution, or have you given any thought to other options?
I have, Mayor. I've thought it through in every context that I could possibly think of that would benefit the public, the guests to our city, tourists to our city, in terms of the importance of informing those people where a hospital is, or where a hospital's emergency room is, and of course the outstanding emergency services that Baptist offers. I've thought that through in terms of why a sign directing those members of our public is an important government interest. I've thought of in what way can we, the city, possibly provide a wayfinding or a directional sign, an informative sign, to help direct people that are in need, emergency type need, to Baptist's emergency room, knowing that that is the only hospital on the island, the beaches area, that provides that unique type of hospital emergency room. It's open and available 24/7, 365 days out of the year. They have outstanding emergency room physicians and nursing staff. They have the equipment that only a hospital of that quality emergency room would have. They have diagnostics and testings and all the equipment that a trauma patient would need. And I make those points because those are definitely considerably different than like a quick stop, or I always forget what they're called. Yeah, doc in the box, right? It's a very different scenario what Baptist Hospital offers from any other provider on the island or the beaches area, and I've definitely considered that. And I've thought, in what way can the city help residents and guests and the public to find that unique emergency room? I haven't fleshed it out completely because there's a lot of details to it. The quandary is that the hospital doesn't provide any government services. If the hospital's, if in the unfortunate event something goes wrong with hospital care in the HR, in the ER, that's hospital's alleged malpractice. It's the hospital's alleged wrongdoing. It's not a city service. It's not a government service. However, is there a way that the city can direct legally and constitutionally, provide directional signs to the hospital's ER room and the services that they provide? Because as you know, the city's not in the business of directing the public to a business. So I've been thinking it through, and it's a unique type of possibility.
Yeah, because they are different when you're dealing with public safety. I know you can look at it holistically, like it's commercial in essence, but to take it a little bit further, it's, the more important aspect is you're dealing with people's lives. You didn't look into what the town of Gilbert did with their hospital?
No, the town of Gilbert, no, I don't really want to mess with the town of Gilbert, more than, yeah, I know. I mean, after you read, you want to never visit town of Gilbert.
We couldn't find it, there's no signs there?
No, but I have thought about, there are city signs and government signs that are essentially non-commercial government signs that direct the public in terms of particular destinations or points of interest and services, and we would need to find a way that the city is providing a public purpose and a public good to help provide a direction to the public, guiding into this unique and one and only hospital emergency room and the services that they can obtain there.
And we do that currently downtown to shops and restaurants. So the city already provides signage to places. So I can see the city doing it. Now, what about they have non-conforming wayfinding signs currently?
Right.
They have 3,
They have
13,
two.
Beach,
Two.
and,
Beach
and
and
Ninth.
A1A.
Ninth. Yep.
Beach and Ninth and A1A at 13.
And a small one at night on 13th.
Yeah, that's the one, there's
Oh,
a
that's
small one.
small, yeah.
So is there a way that we can work with them? Because they're grandfathered in, they get to still keep those signs, right?
Right, they can keep those and they can actually make some reasonable repairs to them as a result of the storm damage. However, from our understanding in the meeting with the Baptist representatives, they want more than just those signs in terms of the emergency services wayfinding or directional signs. They want more than just those signs that are currently there grandfathered in. They would like more than just the standard H signs that we've seen around town that directs the public to the hospital in general. They would like approximately 5 or 6 of these emergency room or emergency services signs.
Have they submitted a example?
We currently do not have an example of their most recent concept. We've only heard it verbally. So we don't have a concept of what they currently have beyond what's described in the current ordinance. Again, the item before the council tonight is all laid out in the agenda packet that Bill Mann has submitted. Their proposed ordinance is there. But in terms of any other lesser form of sign, we haven't received any conceptual of a small sign.
And they want these signs to be on private property, not public property, correct? Because I guess the reason I'm asking is because like the blue informational signs from the Department of Transportation on the state right of way, they have the actual business saying Chick-fil-A is 2 miles this way.
No, it's on public property, public right of way.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
They're wanting it to be on
They
private property.
want those to be able to be on private property.
Well, the ordinance, the way they've drafted it, would be either on private property or in the public right of way. It would have the option of being either, both instances being off-site.
The way it's currently drafted.
The way it's
So
currently drafted.
The item for vote tonight is currently drafted, they want it on both.
The last conversation we had with them from a verbal perspective was, is there a way, as Chris was indicating, we could do something to where they are government-owned signs, or we put up signs that are more generic in nature that are in the public right of way that we maintain. The best example that we can point to is over on San Pablo in front of the Mayo Clinic, where if you've driven on that road, there's not just the blue sign with the white H for the hospital, but underneath it is the word emergency, red sign, white lettering. And depending on which direction you go, you see 2 different emergency signs. One, if you're going from the south, the first sign says go straight, the second one says turn left. And if you're coming from south to north, there's one emergency sign that says turn here. So that was the last verbal conversation we had with the representatives from Baptist is there a possibility we could migrate towards that type of a model where we have several emergency signs that are in the public right of way to get people off those major thoroughfares of Beach and A1A and start directing them in towards the intersection of 13th and 9th.
And the answer to that question is,
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Because it's crossing over 2 different concepts. It is a sign that directs the public to a non-government service, hospitals, Baptist Hospitals Emergency Care, which is not a government function, and it's not a government service, versus the city installing generic signs that ideally serve a government purpose and serve the public by helping direct them to or help guide them to the unique emergency room that the hospital provides. So it's a blending of 2 concepts. It's a city sign, but it is Baptist services. And they stand independent, of course, from any city function or city purpose. You know, again, the example is if something goes wrong at Baptist Hospital, I'm not defending Baptist Hospital. Their attorneys are, because they're private. They're acting on their own. So the question is, how can the city provide signage to help benefit the public, to guide them to Baptist's emergency room? The current signs that point the public to Ocean Walk or downtown area or the festival area, and I realize there are some of those older signs on 3rd that direct, there's one sign that says bed and breakfast, and it's a directional arrow, and there's also one below it that indicates, antiques. So, I agree. Those are somewhat questionable in the post-Reed era. However, the other government signs that point the public to general points of interest, such as, like I said, the beach or beach parking. These are just general areas that the government is allowed to provide signage for to help guide the public to these government areas. That wouldn't be the case for us providing a sign directing the public to Baptist Hospital's emergency room. But I'm working on it. I'm thinking it through. If this took 10 pages to explain to you why I would recommend not voting approval of their current ordinance, I'm putting equal work into trying to figure out how can we help the public. So I am thinking.
Well, definitely changing it for private, so have signs of private property could set a precedent which would have potential pitfalls along the road in future.
Mhm.
So, if we put the onus on how we can do it, we can help them using public property. Then it's kind of the city's discretion. Without, I know there's going to be a lot more to it than that,
Yeah.
but just kind of looking at it from above, I think that would be better for us to consider as opposed to changing it for private property, because then we can't show favoritism over one business over another. So I think that's where Tom Gilbert kind of got in the issue. Is that what you're thinking along those lines?
It is. It is what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking that such a sign, a city installed sign on city property that helps aid the public in helping to direct them, especially in a situation where it's an emergency situation, because the assumption is that those signs are there to benefit someone who's in an emergency situation. And perhaps Baptist has some statistics about how many people arrive at their emergency room by their own car or their family or friend's car rather than an ambulatory transit, But that we're hopefully aiding the public in helping them transport themselves or their family members or friends in getting to Baptist's emergency room. If the city installs those on city property, if we are confronted with challenges by other businesses that would be claiming that they're being treated unequally because we've decided to use a city sign and city property to direct to just one company in Jacksonville Beach, we would be confronted by other medical providers. Those are the challenges that we would face. And then the signs being city signs on city property, the council could direct the planning and development or public works department to remove those signs. So we could remove the issue immediately upon your direction if we find that we are being challenged by other businesses, and we would just remove the signs and we would remove the problem. The signs would no longer exist. But yeah, I am thinking, I'm thinking all those lines through, as opposed to allowing Baptists to have their signs installed where they would like it to be installed. I realize that they would be willing to go through our planning and development department and the code department and comply with whatever we would have created to enable them to install it, but it's going to be their signs, their installation. It puts the whole scenario in a different posture. That is, we're going to be the entity being challenged and sued by other local businesses that we're treating differently. We could have other businesses challenging our sign code if we change our sign code. And Baptist isn't the entity that would be getting sued. We would be getting sued. So I'm trying to think in terms of how to best protect the city, how to work with an important business partner, how to aid the public. I'm thinking all this through, how to not violate constitutional law and get us known as, Reed versus City of Jacksonville Beach. So it's it takes some processing to come up with the best resolution for it.
I think the other thing that is unique here, not just that they're the only emergency room on the island is that they're in a neighborhood and they're in a residential area. So unlike Mayo, you're driving right by it, it's pretty hard to miss.
Right.
It's pretty easy to miss Baptist until you're right up to it. So, and you mentioned they're an important business partner for us, and we've had a really, I think, very strong relationship, at least since I've been on council, as they've really grown and expanded it in our community. So I would like to see a mutually agreed upon plan, because it is a service to our residents, even though it's not a government service. And can you give an example of someone who might have a successful claim against us if we did pass this change?
I think another medical facility that's in the beaches area, well, I should say maybe in Jacksonville Beach, but a medical facility that provides essentially the evaluation and diagnostics and care and treatment on an emergency type of basis, where that medical facility, and it could be a standalone set of physicians that have
Like
very
urgent care,
Yeah.
like an urgent.
it could be an urgent care, yeah. It could be, like we mentioned, the urgent care. It could be a set of physicians that have their own practice where they can and provide emergency evaluations, diagnose the condition, treat the condition, all on an emergency basis. Urgent care they provide that 24/7. Some of them, I think, are open 24/7. So we could be challenged by groups that would come up with a creative argument that would say, we provide the same services that Baptist provides in the emergency context. You can come to us on an emergency basis, we can diagnose you, we can provide you with the emergency treatment that you need. However, you've selected Baptist Hospital to direct the public to. I provide you with the same services as a physician, you've decided not to direct them to us.
Do any of those currently exist in Jacksonville Beach?
I haven't dug that deep in terms of looking at those,
There's a
but
couple, yeah.
But it's
But-
specific in that 395.002 defines who qualifies as that, and it specifically says hospitals. It doesn't say anything else.
yeah, it doesn't say anything else, but the definition,
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah.
it is, I mean, the
Emergency
chapter,
services is defined by our statute. I'm just
Right.
trying to, I think that's what we should look at.
And
See what
that
could-
hospital's a key word. I mean, anybody can say provide emergency care, but,
Right.
you know, are we gonna get another hospital here? It's highly unlikely.
right.
But if we do, I would argue that they should be entitled to wayfinding signs too,
Sure.
because it's an important aspect of a community.
Right.
So,
I agree that the chapter that's cited and incorporated in their definition is a chapter that's geared towards hospitals.
Mhm.
But again, playing devil's advocate, there will be a creative argument made by a set of physicians who hire a big firm that are going to look at this definition of emergency services and care means medical screening, examination, and evaluation by a physician, or to the extent permitted by law, by other appropriate personnel under the supervision of a physician, so nurses, to determine if an emergency medical condition exists, and if it does, to care, treat, and provide surgery by that physician necessary to relieve or eliminate the medical condition.
So it has to be a surgery center?
I mean, I would say that there's probably a lot of medical offices that would argue, that's exactly what we do.
Well, we have an animal hospital that does that.
Animal hospitals,
So,
that's part of what
does exactly everything. you
part of our
said.
discussion was, where does it stop? Because you'll have dental offices that say, we do that. You can come in, you've broken your tooth and you fell on the sidewalk, we do all of those. A vet will claim, I can provide all of those. So they're gonna end up grouping, the arguments will come from law firms that represent medical professionals. And they're gonna group themselves together in terms of emergency care and fit themselves into this line of services.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but in my 20 years of experience, the other thing that I've found is that when you have an issue of land use that goes into the court system, it is literally a crapshoot as to whether or not you're going to get a judge that understands how land use works. So while we're talking about challenges that may come from the medical side of the issue, There's nothing to say that we wouldn't get a legal challenge from someone who just happens to be a private entity, saying, you've allowed off-site signage for a private entity, both into the public right-of-way and on other private properties, and we want that right as well. And if the judge doesn't know enough about land use to make an informed decision, there's every possibility we could be tied up in the court system for a long number of years, fighting a battle over whether or not our sign ordinance is enforceable, or whether or not it's being overturned at a lower level when we're going through appellate courts.
Right, a lot of appellate courts with lots of
Yeah.
description of trying to convince a panel about constitutional law and how it's applied.
My concern is that Gilbert is, one of the things that they stressed was content neutral. You sign, size, you can do location, all that stuff, but content neutral, and I'm not, with the exception of government services.
Right.
And that's a big exception,
Yeah.
not medical. And so I could see a lawsuit coming saying, this isn't content neutral.
Oh, absolutely.
In 2015, we spent months on this sign code. It was not easy, because there were things that we did not like about it and things that could happen. There's a fence in town that is allowed to do what it's doing, but it can't, because it has to be content neutral, so we're not allowed to put a lot of that in there. And that was my concern, because we really did spend a long time on going through all the pros and cons of content neutral.
Absolutely, and you hired one of the best, and unfortunately he's passed, but you hired one of the best that many governments throughout the state used. So you did your best to put Jacksonville Beach in the proper position of where it currently is, to get that established.
So we need to gear toward a compelling state interest in locating the one hospital we have in our city and utilize that as grounds for creating government signs?
I don't think we
is
have.
that the analysis we go down? Or?
Well, no, I don't think we have to go to that strict of a analysis. I think that the best solution is to try to find a city sign, a government sign that helps provide that. Because exactly what Councilor Dumont says, which is we currently are content neutral. If we begin to allow private entities or organizations or companies to place signs that are no longer content neutral, now we're in a hole. We've reversed ourselves. So I'd say we don't have to go down that path, so to speak, but I think the solution path is can the city do it? Because the city is under a much lower standard of scrutiny. The question is are we blurring the lines? And we're not just pointing the public generally to Ocean Walk or to our free parking lots that are oceanfront. We're not guiding tourists to the arts festival downtown in general, to the Latham Park.
Is it possible to just do like emergency room? We have one emergency room.
Right.
And so none of the other medical facilities can say that we're an emergency room. The dentist and I guess
Right.
the animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do that in conjunction with helping them with their current wayfinding signs. And rehab, like they keep their wayfinding signs.
Yeah.
And we kind of supplement that with city signs.
Well, frankly, I think that in the conversations we've had, they're looking for more than just having signs placed near where their current signs are. They're looking for, I believe, additional signage in areas where they currently
I believe it was 6.
where they
6
currently
options.
do not exist.
But that puts us up against Gilbert.
Right. And it flies in the face of our decades-long-standing prohibition of off-site signs, which essentially is a sign that either advertises a particular good or service or a company or organization that is not on the site of where that organization or business or company is. So technically, any sign that's off of the site of where that business is, it's an off-site sign, and that's why we don't allow it. Just like we don't allow that billboard that's been out there for so long,
Yeah.
which is a billboard and an off-site sign in 2 instances. We can't get into that because you're entitled to a shade reading on that issue. So we'll talk about that someday in shade. But those are the exact intentions that this council has demonstrated over decades, is to stop and prohibit those types of signs. So
I want to throw an observation in there. 4 of us have been through this for a long time. Before then, I mean, they worked on a previous sign ordinance in the last council before us. You know, we had a different city manager and a different city attorney when we went through this most of the time. So, you know, I share Ms. Hoffman's comments that we need to find something that's mutually beneficial, but I'd add that we need to do it in a relatively decent amount of time, because the hospital's been very patient and been very friendly about working with us as we go through this. But I think it's important that, because you guys are just in the starting blocks, realize this has been going on for a long time, and we really need to work quickly to find some kind of legally based, mutual beneficial scenario.
understood, yes, sir.
Do you recommend tabling this item? And then,
How much time do you need?
yeah,
5 more years. I don't recommend tabling this item. To go along with what the mayor said, I think that it's been going on a long time, and I've read stacks of historical documents, and I realize it's a long time. I think that this item, as it's currently presented to the council, should be voted on tonight. As it's been presented from Baptist and submitted by the Planning and Development Department. I think this item should not be tabled. We shouldn't delay what currently exists. If Baptist comes to you later tonight and they pull their item and they withdraw their request, then that's one issue. But in terms of the item as it currently stands and the proposed ordinance and the application that's before you, I think that you should vote on that and we should move forward in working similar to the way the mayor has expressed.
Oh,
That's my.
in the
That's my.
future, so I'd like to know, you mentioned the off-site signs, I'd like to know where and what they have in mind, because you mentioned we don't have mock-ups.
Right.
That'd be good, and then if we have any data, and I don't know if Baptist can provide this, as far as have people been having issues trying to find the emergency room? Because it is a crucial matter, it's time sensitive. Another thing that springs to mind is the amount of visitors we get out here. Our residents kind of know through experience where the hospital is, but if you're here staying in a hotel, you have no idea. So, you know, I understand we have to do it the right way, but like Mayor Latham says, I think, you know, we kind of need to do this as quickly as we can, as safely as we can.
I agree, yeah. It's not, we can continue to work. There's no question in my mind that there's not a brick wall here. We haven't put this to sleep at all. Just with respect to the particulars that are before the council tonight, I've put that to sleep in terms of my memorandum and my legal advice and recommendation to the council. I've done that and it's here, and the Planning and Development Department have adopted that position as well for tonight's item. Otherwise, going forward, we are working on a proper solution. I'm more than willing to continue to work with Baptist. And I'm doing a lot of the thinking for them, but I haven't shared it all with them, but I'm trying, I'm working on it, I'm thinking it through and trying to do it the right way, absolutely.
We have looked at a couple other options that, when the FDOT and City of Jacksonville were approached, those were dead ends. But we were looking at trying to do something commensurate with the mast arms at intersections, to do some type of illuminated or backlit signage.
Okay, is there anything off the South Beach Parkway exit? I mean, I drive that every day and I don't really,
There's an H.
There's an H.
where's that at?
As you're taking off where the Whiskey Jacks is.
Yep.
It
on
just
that-
says go forward and turn left,
Yeah, there's an
It's
H.
just a white H on a blue
so
sign
now
with
you're
an arrow.
supposed to find it
That's
from
it.
there.
It's a left
Yeah,
arrow.
there's
It is a left there.
There's a left there.
You take a left there and then that puts you on the ninth, and then on ninth it
There's
says,
another
then take
H
the
with an
next
arrow.
left.
Right. There is a series of H's to follow around town, but absolutely.
And that's FDOT that puts those up, the blue H's?
Depends on the right of way. Just depends on whose right of way it is.
Depends on the right of way. Anything that's in the JTB right-of-way is a DOT sign. Anything on 9th is City of Jacksonville.
Yes, sir.
And
Up
the
to a certain
masts,
point.
the
How
arm
many
masts are
H's?
DOT.
Our master DOT.
So there's H's on the arm masts, and those are DOT. So again, with respect to the emergency services or emergency room wayfinding or directional signs, we have to stay clear of DOT's jurisdiction and properties. So we would be conceptually working only with the City of Jacksonville Beach properties, which of course we would bring to the council for approval. But we have to stay away from DOT jurisdiction and properties in making this decision.
Okay.
And again, not placing city signs on private property.
Correct.
So we have this little niche of cities' properties, cities' signs, helping direct the public to the emergency. That's the goal.
Yeah, I agree with everyone here that we need to find a good solution. They are a great, and they're in my district, and I know they do a lot of community outreach, trying to make sure that the citizens are heard, they're doing things like that. That said, you gotta be really careful when it comes to the Gilbert case. I can't stress enough when we talk about content neutral, and if we pass this, let's say, you like where they are, and somehow it passes, and there's a legal challenge, we lose our sign code, and everybody gets to put up off-site signs. And that is the worst possible option. Everybody putting up signs everywhere they want to.
Yeah.
So this is just something that, I know we've been moving slowly with the hospital, but there are, it's not the ideal option for either party, but, find ways around it. But I would strongly recommend not opening up our sign code.
Yeah, I agree. And it happens to be during a time when we are litigating over the billboard, which is just, so, we're strong in our position there. And it's sort of we're also trying to figure something out in the hospital as well.
Good luck, Lou.
So tomorrow afternoon, think you'd be ready?
Yes, sir. So for purposes of the briefing, as it's a briefing not only to advise you of the memorandum, but also to help provide you with some legal guidance on my suggestion on how you address the current agenda item for tonight. And that's it. But that does not foreclose our work and effort in attempts to continue working with Baptist moving forward after tonight. Absolutely.
While we're on the topic of signs,
Yes, sir.
I got did I send you an email about the the call I got from Councilman Ferrero in Jackson?
You did not.
Okay, I'll shoot some information, but one of our businesses had a sign that evidently was modified greater than 50%, and now they're concerned, they're just completely clueless that they weren't allowed to do that without reforming to our new sign code, which I think is a monument requirement.
Yep.
So what are we doing to get that information out into the community? Are we doing it through code enforcement when we see somebody doing work on signs? Or are we going up and talking to them? I don't mean to put Bill or you on the spot, it's a relevant topic.
If they're doing work on a sign, that requires a permit, they should be coming in and pulling the permit, at which point they're instructed as to what they can and can't do with their sign. If they're doing work on their sign that we're unaware of, then it comes down to code enforcement and whether or not it's called in. I don't know if you want to add to that, Bill?
The only other thing I would say is we've got a handful of regular sign vendors in the area, and they were educated on the new sign code within months of when it came in, just through permit review. I mean, we get the occasional out-of-town, out-of-state sign vendor, and we have to tell them. So it's a combination of code enforcement, not necessarily outreach to business owners, but outreach to the sign companies that are doing the work.
So you need a permit for even a less than 50, any change at all? You need a permit for?
Sign face changes don't require a permit.
Okay.
Literally just a sign face change, but any structural modification requires a permit.
Or electrical, correct?
Or electrical, yes, sir.
I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Mayor, could I ask just for some clarification, because I can maybe request Baptist to provide us with some of the information, some of the answers to some of the questions we had. So what I heard council say tonight was it would be beneficial if the council has some conceptuals of their proposed signs. And this again is going forward after tonight. If, if the council does not approve the item and the application tonight. Going forward, if Baptist could provide us with some of the conceptuals of their current, of a new or a different proposed sign, the proposed locations where they would like those signs to be, and would you like Baptist to provide statistics as to?
If they have them, I mean, I don't know if they track it, but if they have it, yeah, I think that would help.
Right.
One of my concerns about what you just said though is that if we take in their rendering of what they expect to do, aren't we making some form of, isn't that swaying our opinion on moving forward, and we're supposed to be content neutral?
It is supposed to be content neutral, but without that type of information from them, we would be sort of going forward operating blind. Because if Mike and I were to meet and discuss and try to hash out different ways or alternative ways that we can make this happen, we'd just be going blindly if we didn't even have a conceptual from them, because we would just be speculating, guessing as to what that sign would even look like. So it would help us if they gave us a concept of what they would foresee possibly the mutual sign being. Because without a concept, I can't sit down with Bill and Mike and us look at this and say, is this something, can we work with this? How do we move forward?
At what point does a concept become an authorized sign?
Not until it's permitted and installed.
So theoretically, we could say, this sign that has a big A on it, we're okay with, but when they actually bring the sign out and put it, it's got a B on it. So
Right.
Well,
there's really nothing we can do to.
Well, I think the concept we're talking about is if it is a
That's
government-owned,
what I was-
government-installed
Yeah.
sign, or government right-of-way.
Right.
I apologize.
So we're talking
That's what I
about,
was-
yeah.
Yeah, and if we're going forward talking about it internally, Bill's department, Mike and I, and we're working it through, and we just have we're envisioning the typical standard red and white emergency room sign that we've seen, and then like Mike's example was in front of Mayo, and directing you to that emergency room. Without conceptuals from the interested hospital, we're just guessing as to what it might be. So we would need them to provide us with some guidance on what they would suggest the city's sign could potentially look like. And then also locations on city property where the city might elect to place that sign. And then also statistics and tracking, if they have that information, to provide us with that. But these are all these are all bits of information that Baptist could help us in the thought process. Because if it's something more and different than that standard red and white emergency services sign that we're used to seeing,
Yeah, it says emergency services sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Right.
Not a good thing.
Right, then we might be going in the wrong direction.
And Corey, I think you already know the answer. There is no MUTCD emergency sign.
Yeah.
That's just something I think Jacksonville came up with for the purposes of Mayo and maybe some other medical facilities around Jacksonville.
I would suspect that for some of the population, it's a non-issue because people who are visiting are using their GPS to find their way around. And I don't even see signs when I'm using my GPS. I don't even pay any attention, but I realize there's other parts of the population that still need it. But I also see that there could eventually be a time when the signs maybe are not as critical, because of technology, so.
Right, and I think of all the festivals that we have, and the marathon that's coming soon as an example of runners coming, and families coming to support those runners from all different areas of the state and country, and Florida Georgia weekends, and people coming from Georgia to visit our community. So yeah, there are many examples of guests and tourists, and then maybe perhaps even some residents that have been here for a while and they still don't know where Baptist is or the emergency room is for that sake. Don't know. That's why Baptist could help us with some statistics and tracking and information, because I'm certainly not in the position to provide that information, and it's not my client, so I'm their person anyway. So,
Anybody else? We've got
I do have
15
one.
minutes.
How are the meetings, the community meetings going so far?
Well, are you guys done with the sign issue? Because if we're going to close that out, then there's a handful of topics of which one of them.
That's what I was gonna say, you got 15 minutes to
Yeah.
decide if you want. know where to
Chris, do
go.
you have the direction you need?
I sure do. Yep, absolutely. Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
All right,
Thank
we'll wrap up that item. Let's start with that one, where we've had 3 community conversations so far. I think they've all gone very well. We've gotten very good input from the community that's been in attendance. There are some consistencies that we're hearing from meeting to meeting to meeting. I know that Councilmember Dumas had the privilege of attending all 3, and I think she would agree that there are some overlaps that are occurring. And Chris, I think you were at 2 of them, and you probably heard some overlaps there as well. So by the time we conclude all 6, and there's a possibility we might add 1 or 2 more, depending on how many more responses we get over the next week or 2. But my guess is there will be some pretty good overlap and consistency as to what areas need to be addressed, but also what the prospective vision is for the community going forward. So far so good is the best thing to say about that.
Roughly how many folks are showing up?
We're trying to keep them to about 10 people per group. And the big thing is you can only participate once, so you don't end up with the same people meeting after meeting. This way you get a pretty good diversity across the different meetings. We're having them different days of the week and different times. We've had one that was on a Saturday morning. We've had several that are on weekday evenings. We've got another one, I think, coming up this Saturday in the morning from 10:30 to 12. So we're kind of mixing it up to try and get people that you wouldn't normally get just by having it on a weeknight at 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
If you add any, because I know the weeknights have been all Thursdays,
Mhm.
which have conflicted with, for me,
Citizens Police Academy.
right,
Yeah.
and then Saturdays. So if we could have a different day, if you
Yes.
add one, than a Thursday, I think that would be good, because there may be other people who have Thursday conflicts too.
Did you do yours on Thursday?
I haven't done one yet.
Somebody told me, because I wanted the Thursday one, somebody said you put your name in.
Oh, I am, I'm signed up for a
No.
Thursday one, yeah, to do one, because I'm,
Right.
Right, I was thinking everybody's supposed to do one except for you.
I haven't, because I
You're
work
on there?
Saturdays.
Yeah, somebody had 2, and one of you ladies had 2, I think, and Chris filled me on the second. So I can't remember which one of you.
yeah, I think it was me, and so I think you're gonna, I'm still gonna attend,
Uh-huh.
but you'll host it, yeah.
It's in my family.
Next item I've got on the list, just so you're aware, there was a meeting of the 3 city managers last week to talk about a few different issues. Number 1, to meet everybody, because Neptune has their new city manager now, Stefan. And the 3 of us spoke for a little bit, which was good. There were 2 primary issues that came out of there, just to put everybody on the same page. The first is with regards to the replacement of the flashing beacon between Fletcher High School and Fletcher Middle School. The one that's there doesn't always work consistently. There's a thought process to replace it. Neptune Beach is spearheading the effort to try and get financial partners to the table to help replace that rapid flashing beacon. One of the things the 3 beach communities talked about was approaching the city of Jacksonville to see if they'd be a financial partner. So we're reaching out to our representative, Lori Diamond. We have a tentative meeting set up within the next couple of weeks, and we'll see if there's an opportunity for Jacksonville to participate as well. Especially since it is a school board issue, and Jacksonville and the school board have been.
50 cents off?
I mean, it's on Third Street,
I
right?
think it should be
What's that?
under
It's on Third Street?
It's actually on 20th, it's on Seagate, right in between the middle school and the high school. Which leads me to the next update for you, which is we also had a meeting with the city of Jacksonville to talk about Penman Road and the fact that they are getting ready to start their project to put in the rapid flashing beacons on that corridor as well. They provided us with some detailed graphics, which if you'd like, I can have them scanned and sent to you all if that's something you'd like to see.
Are any of those mid block? Or are they all at the,
These are at intersections. There's one at 4th, there's one at
8 and
8th,
15.
and one at 15th.
So
Then there are-
I just want to make sure, because they had something happen in a mid-block location that
Yeah, there's a couple other locations. There's at 18th and at Arden, they're proposing to redo the striping and the markings on the ground. So they won't get flashing beacons, but they are going to do some upgrades on other crossings on the road corridor as well. But we'll get this scanned in and sent over to you. Mayor, did you want to bring up the balloons and whether or not there's a consensus to?
There was a discussion, I had a meeting with the other two mayors, and one of the, I guess it was Fernandina Beach, has passed an ordinance on prohibiting the release of balloons because Mylar and plastic balloons are going into the ocean. And Atlantic Beach is adopting their ordinance. I asked her to send a copy to us so that we could look at it and see if it's something we wanted to consider. You guys,
Isn't that a state? I think there's a state law about that. Because I've had a citizen contact me about it, and she's upset because she said that it should be enforced because it's a state law.
We can check.
Yeah.
If it's,
Yeah,
shaking
it's a
his
state
head,
law.
you
can shake it.
There's a number,
Mhm.
it can be released per state law. I can,
well,
Are they talking, so there's a certain number that can be?
yeah, I believe so. I'll have the answer for you before we go to start council.
We had, it might have been the same lady, the clerk's office last week had a lady come to the office and Lori researched it on the state.
Uh-huh.
And it was 10 balloons or less every 24
I
hours.
believe that's correct.
And this is a
We're talking
complete
about-
prohibition?
we're talking about a complete prohibition, I'm
Okay.
presuming.
the way it was written.
So if you'd like, we'll go ahead and do a comparison of what Fernandina is doing against the state. And if it's more restrictive or if it's a complete ban, is that something you'd all be interested in seeing come back?
Go Green, and the beaches Go Green, and the Beaches Green Chamber have been real active in plastics, and I thought it just would be a good idea to support their.
Based on the comments we've been hearing about environmental stewardship, I would highly encourage the consideration of this ordinance.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
very popular in my village.
Okay, and then Councilmember Dumont, I think you wanted to bring up an item regarding education of residents.
Yes, this came up in your meeting a lot, and these are things that we've talked about for a while. When I was on the planning commission, one thing that we have, one issue that we have, just any city has, is information asymmetry. The citizens don't, the residents don't know what kind of information can be accepted in a quasi-judicial hearing. So when you have applicants who go to the planning department, they have lawyers, and they understand the process and such, they have a much better case that can be taken into consideration with the deliberations of the planning commission or the board of adjustments versus the regular citizen who's just like, this is going to be bad for the neighborhood. They don't know what they have to do. So one of the things I'd like to see is the city, when you send out the letters saying something's going on next door, a simple checklist as to what a quasi-judicial hearing is, because they don't know what that is, and what kind of information is acceptable or can be used by the people who are making the decision versus I think, I feel, I like, or I don't like. Can we discuss this?
We discussed it, and I can prepare, as I told Georgette, it's essentially quasi-judicial hearing 101. So it's just a general concept of what quasi-judicial hearings processes are. It's not, my initial concern when I first heard this concept was I'm not going to help advise or instruct any private individual to make a case against the city at one of our boards. I'm not going to guide them through procedure or substance. But after I saw it in a different way and I realized that there are private individuals that are entitled to use our boards, and that's what they're there for, but to be completely at a loss and completely uninformed, it doesn't help the resident very much at all. So I agree that being the neighborhood type of community we are, that it could be done. I can prepare a basic 101 pamphlet that any layperson would be able to read and feel, well, the city's advised me of how this process works. I'm not giving them legal advice as to how to put it into effect to benefit their interest or how to defeat the city, but I can definitely prepare something.
Doesn't the code kind of outline it a little bit.
It does,
So we
actually.
could just attach the code and just say this evidence is to be presented in a quasi-judicial capacity with a, but the code's pretty
But they don't know what
easily
that
read.
is.
You put the language on a piece of paper.
Have you read the, well, you're a lawyer, you read code and you're thinking,
No,
well, this
the
just makes
one-
perfect sense.
The one paragraph, I mean, it's pretty easy to read
Well,
when you read the
But it
the
doesn't,
code for
it
a
doesn't
hearing.
go into, well, you need to, like, you have to be a professional to be able to provide this information. You can't say my property value is going to be impacted if I'm just saying my property value is going to be impacted if that goes up. Because I'm not a real estate person. So I can't, that information cannot be used by the board.
So you just want to educate what competent
Yes.
evidence is?
Confidence.
In layman's.
In layman's
Yeah,
terms, so like the regular person
That's
can
We-
just understand what they're facing.
We can
Bullet
do that, we
points
can do
or
that as
something?
staff. And we
Absolutely.
can send that out to all of the affected property owners when we send out those notices.
Sure.
We put it in there
You-
with the
that
notice.
what's presented to the board is competent, substantial evidence, and this is examples of that.
Right.
I guess that's fair. I thought you were meaning like the rules, and I was like, the code does say the
Yeah,
rules.
right, and they've read the rules before, but they don't realize that even though these are the rules, we can't consider what you're saying, even though you're saying it very wholeheartedly and crying at times, because you're not an expert.
Agreed.
And then they don't understand and they get frustrated and they think that they're not being heard. And when that's not the case, they, yeah, no.
Yeah, I got, with,
I
I
agree.
got
I
the,
agree.
with all due respect, after one of the planning commission meetings, I'm like, you know.
And we could always make the argument that, we've provided this outline, this 101 basic format outline to you because we want you to view the process as being fair and balanced. And that's the goal of the city, is to give you the opportunity as a resident to be heard and present in a fair and balanced situation before one of the boards or the commission, and that's absolutely fine. I can craft it and I can bring it back to you for review.
Google it first. This sounds like something that surely already exists.
Yeah.
Take
I've
it,
already,
we'll find
I was halfway done
You
while
already
we were on
found
the
it.
phone. Yeah.
He's that good.
So
No
the,
problem.
so the last thing to bring you up to speed on is that, because we skipped over it, don't leave yet.
Okay.
Okay.
When the city managers met, one of the purposes of us meeting was also to talk about an approach to having a three-community conversation about stormwater fees, and the fact that the school board has stopped paying stormwater fees in all three communities for the last few years. So the three city managers met, the three city attorneys have all talked, and I believe the three mayors have all conversed as well. And we're in the process of setting up a three-community meeting. I think we've actually got it on our calendars for the three city managers, three mayors, and three city attorneys to all be in the same room to discuss whether or not there are any legal avenues going forward. So we'll let you know what comes as a result of that meeting.
Why did they stop paying their stormwater fees?
Because there was someone who discovered and argued that the statute doesn't actually require them to pay because they don't have a contractual relationship with us to make them pay per contract. And they argue that they're statutorily immune from either having to pay the fees, and if they're not, they're statutorily immune from us suing them to make them pay the fees. So they've put up basically three shields in that you don't have a contractual relationship with us, so in contract you can't make us pay. The statute hasn't explicitly waived sovereign immunity as it relates to the fees that you're requiring us to pay. And even if somehow you can read into the statute that we are required to pay the fees, we're still entitled to sovereign immunity from suit at your attempt to make us pay. So these are the sort of arguments that they've been making for many years, and they've been winning all over the state.
This has basically been statewide. It's been implemented everywhere that they've all stopped paying. It happened where I was in Pinellas County. It happened where you were down in.
Yeah, I had a case. I had one of
Down
the
in the Borough
seminal
County.
cases that are cited throughout briefings all around the state. City of Key West versus Florida Community College. And the community college decided that they are one of the schools and one of the school boards, and their property, as a school board property, they are not required to pay the fees. And they won.
Are they paying Jacksonville?
Jacksonville has I think Jacksonville has drafted a exemption. So if I recall right, Jacksonville has kind of removed the dispute in making their school board exempt, making the school board exempt in their jurisdiction. So essentially saying, don't worry about it. You're not required. Okay. If I read that right, I think that's what they've done. So they've removed
What are we talking about?
the charges. Are,
2,600 a month, I think, is what, and they've not been paying us for about 2 years, so we're between $40,000 and $50,000 that they haven't paid us at this point.
and we're confronted with an issue where there have been local governments that have the services provided to public schools, you know, elementary schools, and those local governments have threatened to stop the service. Well, of course, the counter is, you mean my 5-year-old, when she goes to school, you're not going to have any wastewater or stormwater? Okay. So that doesn't work.
Courts frown upon that.
Just back out the amount they owe us from the 50% on the 50 cents on the dollar we send them in taxes.
Right.
Yeah. There was another government that shut down the system, or at least threatened to shut down the system and said, we're going to shut it down and we're going to turn it back on only when you pay your initiation fee to have the service initiated and begin. And when asked by the school board, what is the initiation fee, they looked at how much the fees had accrued, and it was $1.7 million. They said, well, your initiation fee happens to be $1.7 million.
So we'll give you all an update once we have that meeting with all three parties at the table. And that brings us to 12 of.
Perfect. All right, I'll see you guys there at 7. Yeah.